Halifax.
Hello, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. As you probably can tell, I picked up a bit of a scratchy throat on my time away traveling on airplanes. It tends to happen, doesn't it? My apologies for my scratchy voice this morning. We'll do our very best to try to get through the show without losing it. Before we get any further, my sincere thanks to Lisa Blackburn for filling in for me in the last couple of days, giving me a chance to get out of the studio and to go back home and connect up with some friends I haven't seen in a quarter century or so. Lisa did a fantastic job, and my sincere thanks to her. Also, my thanks to Vanessa Vandenez, who does all that hard work behind the glass, keeping things organized and moving forward. We couldn't do it without her. Well, it's playoff time in Major Leagues of Baseball, is it not? The Red Sox down the Yankees last night. They play again, I think it's at 7 o'clock tonight, and they will, whoever wins that series, it's a best 2 out of 3. So the Yankees are in the proverbial backs against the wall situation. Time to dig out all those sports cliches, right? But they have their backs against the wall, and I know the guy that usually occupies this chair is probably pretty nervous right now. So that will go tonight. The Jays will face the winner of that series, and that game will start on Saturday. So you can catch all of that action, the Blue Jays action, live right here on 95.7 News Radio. And I can tell you, I flew in to Halifax yesterday. I flew and I connected in Toronto, and there are a lot of people in that city and in that airport wearing blue T-shirts with October baseball and postseason baseball written on them. Toronto is alive with a playoff team. That's not the Maple Leafs. And hopefully we can see these Blue Jays go really deep into the Major League playoffs. And who knows, maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe a World Series? Let's not prejudge things. Of course, we got a lot of baseball left. But we will watch that game tonight between the Yankees and the Red Sox, 7 o'clock. The winner of that series going on to face the Blue Jays. Well, lots of stuff has happened in my absence over the last couple of days. We would be remiss without sending our thoughts out to Kings County, to that big wildfire that's happening in I think it's Lake George now. Many people evacuated, and the fire continuing to burn out of control. We had an update yesterday. It looked like it's still kind of raging. There's not a lot of containment on it, and I know that those that are evacuated from their properties are pretty nervous right now. And Vanessa and I and everybody here at the station send our thoughts out to them as we continue to deal with this. We kind of thought we were done with it, right? We kind of thought after Long Lake, and they called that one contained, and I saw a burning day, right? The fire safe map showed up some greens, and I thought, well, okay, we're beyond this now, and we can kind of start to put the wraps onto this fire season. But we know that a fire season in Nova Scotia lasts right through until the 15th of October. So hopefully we can get a grip on this. It just makes you wonder because, obviously I was out of market, so I was following along like most of you do, right? On my phone and seeing what was going on. And they seemed to get a grip on that fire on day one, and then it kind of blew out of control with the change in the winds, which, that part of it makes sense. But one often wonders when they have, a fire that is small in size and say that they have, a fair grip on it. They never said it was contained or under control or in control, but have a grip on it. If a locally based, Nova Scotia-based water bomber would have made a difference. So I think that's probably going to reignite the debate over whether or not Nova Scotia should have a water bomber. We know that the province doesn't at this point. Might be something you want to talk about in the open hour today. Also, today is the 1st of October. Can you believe it? Right? Yeah, I call October the best month because it's my favorite month of the year because it's the It's the fall season in full swing. The leaves are changing color. It's I'm a hunter, so it's hunting season. And well, there might be a birthday in there too. Vanessa's shaking her head at me right now. Yeah, I have an October birthday, so it is the best month, but also is a month where things change. And we know today that minimum wage in the province of Nova Scotia has gone up, as the province announced today that it was. I think this is the second increase that we've seen this year, and those that receive minimum wage obviously very happy today. But when minimum wage goes up, that tends to send some consternation, some hand-wringing in the business community. And we're very pleased to welcome into the show today on the phone our friend from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and that's Duncan Robertson. Duncan, how are you?
Good. How are you? Almost hunting season, eh?
Oh, you can just about feel it, right?
Yeah.
So, Duncan, this wasn't a surprise. We knew this was coming, but we didn't have a whole lot of notice, like, a 5-year plan that this was happening. Tell me a little bit about what your members are saying about this increase in minimum wage today.
And that's exactly the kind of issue that we're hearing here, the lack of a long-term plan on how a minimum wage is being set. We know minimum wage is going up. That's a fact of life, but it's how it's going up is really of concern. Usually we would see one increase a year. Now we're seeing 2 in 1 year, which is a significant increase for some of our members. But we really want to see what the methodology behind these increases are, because there's an independent committee composed of both employers and employees that created a methodology of increasing minimum wage by CPI plus 1% each year. That started in 2024, and it seems like they're already throwing that methodology out in the garbage, frankly, with this increase in October. We don't know the overall kind of economic indicator they are using for this increase in October. We do know, however, that it was a party promise in the last election of the former government. So we're just trying to get some clarity, because it is, of course, an uncertain time, and we just need to create some certainty on how minimum wage is being set, create a methodology, stick with that methodology, so we can have some certainty in the economy.
Duncan, we know that we've seen stats, and we've seen other agencies in the province suggesting that a living wage in HRM is closer to $30 an hour rather than $16 an hour. Obviously, those that work in a sector where minimum wage is kind of the salary are happy today. Is it a balance between keeping your employees happy, but obviously keeping an eye on the bottom line of the business?
Well, I think there needs to be some balance, of course. Small businesses are looking for a minimum wage to be set in a way that understands their economic realities and is done in a predictable way. And particularly, too, when we think of kind of the big picture, the increases that are happening, this year and the past few years, for a large multinational corporation, whose headquarters is probably based in America, like Walmart or Costco, they can absorb these increased costs with no problem. But when we survey our members, we see that 5 in 10 cannot absorb costs of these minimum wage increases, and in turn have to pass it on to consumers and prices, which is the last thing they want to do, because it impacts their competitiveness. While larger businesses can absorb this and keep costs low, small businesses, some have no choice but to increase prices for consumers, and that's adding to the ongoing uncertainty. So I think, too, there's a need for government to really step in and really understand that they have a role to play here, too, looking at how they can make life more affordable, looking at the personal basic amount, so that's the amount of salary that's exempt from taxes, looking at that as a way to provide some support for low-income workers, to ensure that government as well is adding or is playing a role in the cost of this. Because frankly, government is setting the minimum wage, but at the end of the day, they're going to be receiving a windfall as well. So they're giving with one hand, taking with another, and we think there's more effective ways to improve the incomes of low-income workers through government programs like targeted supports, like housing benefits, rather than only placing the cost of that at the feet of the employers. There needs to be some balance and some buy-in from government.
It's a bit of a vicious circle, right? Like it's we getting a bump up in pay is always nice, but as you mentioned, a number of your members having to pass that increase on to customers, so you get a bit more in pay, but things are starting to cost more.
It is. And again, we can break that vicious cycle by, again, government looking at how they can make life more affordable. Looking at that basic personal amount is one really good step we think could help low-income Nova Scotians. Because, again, when we look at the increase in pay that some minimum wage employees will get, a good chunk of that is going to go in income taxes to the levels of government. So really this is a bit of an inefficient way to really provide the most direct support. We understand, again, minimum wage has to go up, but we need some buy-in from government here to really provide some financial support as well to make sure it's a teamwork here, and really want to see some support that way.
And there's a lot of businesses in Nova Scotia, small businesses that have a lot of employees that are at that minimum wage level. I think your data shows, 35%?
Yeah, 35% of our members have minimum wage employees on their payroll. But again, when this increase goes, it often means that we're seeing increases across the pay scale. Around 6 in 10 of our members are going to have to see increase in those costs across the pay scale. So there's that direct impact, but there's also the indirect impact when we look at workers' compensation premiums, which employers pay the highest rates in Canada. That is based on your payroll. So when payroll goes up, those costs go up. Also, EI premiums, which employers pay 60% of. That is also going to go up. So there's costs really across the board on this. And again, we really want to see some better targeted solutions here and ensure that government is partnering with employers as well to try and provide that better, of course, standard of living. This
really impacts the service sector, doesn't it?
Particularly, yes, when we look at, servers, waiters, but also people in the back rooms, line cooks, et cetera. Of course, this is going to have an impact on businesses that employs those kind of business who employ those employees. So that's going to have impact for sure.
Duncan, it's not, and I think you mentioned this earlier. It's not that we're advocating against an increase in minimum wage. That kind of has to go up as most salaries do. But I guess what the bottom line is, what business owners are looking for, some kind of roadmap or stability in these things so that they can plan their budgeting over the next 4 or 5 years in order to absorb these costs.
Exactly. If we could have a 5-year plan, that would be absolutely ideal. We can't wait till February of each year to see if it will be increased once, twice in a year, and by what amount. We need some stability here. It's not a way that we can really do business. We need to ensure that this is plannable, that it's affordable, and businesses know what's coming at the end of the day. If I have a member who comes to me and asks, what do you think minimum wage is going to be next year? I simply can't say because I don't know if it will be 1 increase, if it will be 2 increases, or what methodology or economic indicators government is using for their decision of what the rate will be. So we definitely need some better clarity on this.
Duncan, last question. I think, are we heading into a bit of a perfect storm here for business owners and expenses? I know we've got the second minimum wage increase this year. We're staring down a significant increase in power rates. We're looking at a 36% increase in water rates. It's the end of this year and beginning of next could be tough for business owners.
Well, I think we've been in a storm since 2020, right? Small businesses have not really gotten that break they need to catch up. And with these increased costs from government, from utilities, all really coming together, it is, like you said, a perfect storm. But this is not anything new. This is just, again, what small businesses have been dealing with over the past 5 or so years with uncertainty. But they're going to do their utmost to try and do what they can to support their communities as they continue to do. And it's also really important for us as consumers to be supporting small businesses as well. 66 cents out of every dollar spent at a small business stays in their local community. So we really need to get out there and support our local businesses to ensure they can really make it through the next few years. It really is dependent on us supporting our local businesses.
Duncan, appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thank you.
That is Duncan Robertson from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. We're going to take a break. On the other side of it, what to do with old buildings in Halifax. Is there a balance between preserving our heritage and moving forward? You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and as you likely heard during the break there, the province has just announced some areas that are changing. Evacuation orders are updating near that wildfire. The latest one, I'm getting this right off of the NS Alert site, so if you're looking or curious where I'm getting it from, that's what it is. In addition to areas previously evacuated, the mandatory evacuation order update is now for Aylesford Road from and including Fox Mountain Campground to Civic 3847 Aylesford Road. All civics on Spruce Drive, Birch Lane, and Blue Lane, and all civics between 5 North River Road and 1493 North River Road. So I would imagine that fire is continuing to burn out of control. I expect we'll get an update on it later this afternoon. The tradition normally has been around 2 o'clock, and make sure you stay tuned right here to 95.7 News Radio for the very latest on that. And if I get anything between now and then, I certainly will pass it along to you here on the program. It's funny. I was away, as I've said a couple of times this morning, I was away visiting friends and family up in Ontario over the last couple of days, and that's why I wasn't here. And haven't seen a lot of people for a long time, and we get to talking about where you're at now, and so on and so forth. And the people that I was speaking with were saying, well, they'd been to Halifax, or they were planning to come to Halifax and Dartmouth to see the East Coast, and the number one thing is to come and eat seafood, which of course we do have the best seafood in the world, but the second thing is that they are interested in coming here to take a look at some of the old buildings and infrastructure that we have, right? We're in probably one of the oldest, I think it is probably the oldest city in the country, or at least one of the oldest cities in the country. And we do have a lot of history attached to some of these buildings. But then there's the converse of that, of making way for new growth and for this housing crisis that we're dealing with. And I would imagine it's a bit of a back and forth between groups that are trying to save some of that cultural heritage that we have and we're very lucky to have here, and those that are trying to help solve some of the housing issues that we have. We're very pleased to welcome to the show today to give us a little bit of perspective on this, the president of Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia, and that's Andrea Arbic. Andrea, how are you?
I'm pretty well, thanks. How are you?
I am well. Is that what we're kind of talking about here? Is trying to find a balance between preserving history and advancing the city?
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be an either-or situation. There are many cities in Europe that have much greater density than Halifax does. They are old cities, and they manage to accommodate growth, create new housing, have efficient transportation systems without sacrificing their built heritage in the process. And, as you point out, heritage is not just for the sake of heritage. Heritage has economic value. People move here because of our heritage. We attract many tourists because of our heritage. Heritage has economic value. Heritage has social value, and then there's the sort of the environmental aspects of preserving heritage. Every historic building that is retained and renovated and continues to serve a purpose saves a lot of demolition material from going to landfills. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So there are many wide-ranging benefits to preserving heritage, including preserving affordable housing. Many of the most affordable housing units in HRM are in historic buildings. And so as we see those being torn down, we're actually losing affordable housing as opposed to seeing more created. And very often what goes up in the place of the buildings that are torn down are much more expensive units. And so we're actually going backwards in that respect.
Andrea, I hear a lot from people out in the community that say, protecting heritage buildings is nice, but that some of them are in such bad repair now that either they are condemned or are about to be condemned. What do you say to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in a lot of those cases, the condition of buildings is allowed to deteriorate by the owners. This is what we call demolition by neglect, so that then they have to throw their hands up in the air and say, oh my goodness, we have to tear this building down because it's in such bad shape. Well, if it's in bad shape, it's because the owner allowed it to deteriorate, and it's a very convenient excuse. On the other hand, no matter what the condition of many of these buildings is, they can be rehabilitated, and they can be rehabilitated in a way that is cost effective. And as I say, doesn't lead to thousands of tons of demolition waste going into the landfill. So, that I think that's not an adequate excuse for tearing buildings down.
Andrea, you mentioned some places in Europe, and I've traveled over there, and of course, places in England and so on and so forth that have these grade 1 buildings and grade 2 buildings, but they get handed over to a trust, a government trust that pays for the renovations and upkeeps on these things. Is that something we should look at here for these older buildings?
Well, some countries have trusts, as you're referring to. Many don't. They just have sort of stronger municipal bylaws that encourage the retention of heritage buildings. So, I mean, a kind of a trust model would be ideal, but it also has issues. So I don't know if we need to go all the way into that model, but certainly having stronger incentives to retain buildings rather than demolish would go a long way to solving this problem. And there are already existing incentives for registered heritage buildings through the province, and actually the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia also has a grants program that is available to the owners of registered heritage buildings to allow them to apply for funds to maintain the buildings.
How many do we have left? Do you know off the top of your head?
Don't know off the top of our head. I can tell you that that a recent study done by Jonathan Fowler found that almost 90% of pre-1878 buildings in Halifax have been lost. And we don't have comparable figures for post-1878, but anyone who's driven around Halifax lately can see that they're going at a rapid rate. And if we don't do something about it, we're on our way to a similar percentage of post-1878 buildings being lost too.
Saw a big swath of Spring Garden Road. Looks like it's getting ready for demolition, and we're seeing blocks go rather than just individual houses. The developer's saying it's the cheapest way to do it. Is there a balance? Can we work a balance in this kind of situation?
I think we can. I think we have to be more creative. I mean, as I said at the beginning, we just have to look to other jurisdictions to see how it's done. We can see that many European cities are much denser, and they have a respect for heritage. So we really need to ask more of our elected officials to have policies and bylaws in place that encourage retention of heritage buildings. We need to ask more of so both on the elected official level and on the staff level, we need to expect more of developers, and we need the public to say, and I think they are starting to say, enough is enough. We can do better, and we should do better. And this is not about housing versus heritage. There can be a very symbiotic relationship. Owners of a registered heritage building can apply for a heritage development agreement, and under that agreement, the owners of the property can actually negotiate to build more on that property than they would under the current bylaws. So, in fact, a heritage property agreement can lead to greater density on a property. So it's that is in exchange for retaining the heritage property, investing in the heritage property. So it can be a win for heritage, it could be a win for housing, and it could be a win for the developer.
Andrea, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
That is Andrea Arbic. She's the Heritage Trust president here in Nova Scotia, as we try to find that balance between building to ease the housing shortage and preserving some of our history that I know many of you hold very dear. We're going to stop, take a break. We're going to get an update on that, the latest on the evacuations out there in that wildfire in Kings County. And when we come back, did you know that 81% of car seats and booster seats not being used properly? We'll dig into that with the president of the Child Passenger Safety Association of Canada, Katherine Hutka, when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is the Mid-Week Wednesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day out there. I teased this before the news break there, and this number kind of really was it's huge, and it kind of jumped off the page at me when I saw it. And when we saw it, we said, well, we're going to have to talk about this because it's safety and it's kids, right? And apparently a study done recently showed that in Nova Scotia, not in Canada, in Nova Scotia, 81% of car seats and booster seats were used or installed incorrectly, demonstrating an urgent need to increase access to education and resources for families. We're very pleased to welcome to the program today to give us a little bit of perspective on this, Katherine Hutka with the Child Safety Link, the Injury Prevention Program at the IWK Health. Katherine, how are you?
Pretty good. Hello.
That number was kind of staggering when I saw it.
Yeah, it was a little staggering when we did the analysis on the data as well.
So tell me a little bit about how you got to this number. You did some roadside checks. Is that how it worked?
Absolutely. So this study was a joint project between IWK Child Safety Link and Dalhousie University, with the support of the Child Passenger Safety Association of Canada and with funding from Cybex Canada as well. So, we all kind of came together to do this study. And what we did was, we could have done, okay, everyone come and get their car seats checked and let's take a look and see how people are doing. But we really wanted to see how people were transporting their children in the wild, so to speak. So when people didn't know we were going to be looking, when people were just rushing on their way to soccer or on their way home from school. And so it was also a partnership with community partners and emergency services and police services as well, where we did stop cars who were on their way elsewhere, who were transporting children aged 0 to 14. And all told, we were able to document nearly 700 cars with over 1,000 children. So we were able to get a pretty good capture rate. And we do think that our numbers are indicative of the larger population in Nova Scotia as well.
Didn't want people to cheat, like when you go to the dentist and you brush your teeth 3 times before you go.
Well, we did have a little bit of that where we did hear from kiddos saying, I wasn't buckled a minute ago. Or kids that said, I was sitting in the front seat and she asked me to hop in the back. So we did have a little bit of that, but I do think that it was less than, if we had asked people to, like you said, brush your teeth 3 times and all of those things before you come and get it checked.
I may be guilty
absolutely.
of that. It may have happened in the past.
And so some families were aware of it and other families weren't aware that they were doing anything wrong and that they needed help and support to make sure that, everything was shipshape, so to speak.
Were these largely egregious errors like big safety issues, or just minor things, or a little bit of a combination of both?
It was a combination of both. So that 81.4%, that is people having at least one error. And, although we weren't reading the manuals in a detailed way, we did have experienced technicians with lots of training and, hours of experience, taking a look at these things previously. So we did have people who were able to better find those small errors that, might not be very obvious to most people. So we did find those small errors, but for the most part, it was a big mix. So most people did have more than one error when it came to how they were transporting their kiddo. And
that could obviously create problems if everything's not, the way it should be.
Well, that's right. So we know that every single misuse kind of adds to that picture of what it might, the injuries that a child might sustain in a crash. And the reason that this is so important is that we know that, injuries, unintentional injuries, are the number one reason that kids are killed in Canada, and that motor vehicle crashes are the number one cause of fatal injury. And so, on an average year, approximately 65 children between 0 and 14 lose their life as a passenger in a vehicle. And so the thing we know is that a properly used car seat or booster seat, when used in the right way, can reduce that risk that a child will be killed or hurt in a crash by up to 71%.
Was there the story
is a good news story.
Right.
Car seats and booster seats save lives.
So was there a common one that people were doing the most, that they were forgetting to put a strap across a certain point, or was it a combination of all?
Right. So it was a combination, but I will tell you the most common errors that we had kind of in each category. And so in each category, the 4 categories we were looking at were stage-based errors, like is this child in the right kind of seat for their age or weight or height, right? Mm-hmm. The next kind of errors that we had were seat issues, like is there something wrong with the seat itself? And then use and buckling, like attaching the child to the car seat, and then installation errors, like actually putting it in the car. And so in each category, we kind of had a number one, like a key factor. So for that stage-based error, we found that overall, parents and caregivers were moving their children through the stages too quickly. So when we look at, the errors by stage, that was the number one reason, is that basically a child was too small or too young to be in the next stage of seat. And so our big tip is there is no rush. So keep your child in each stage for as long as they still fit that larger seat that you've bought for that purpose. So keep them in the rear-facing seat, keep them in the forward-facing seat, and then finally keep them in a booster seat for longer than you think you might typically. Because we did also see that children who were using an adult seatbelt, about 26% of the kids, a quarter of the kids we saw 0 to 14 who were in an adult seatbelt alone, still needed a booster seat to be safe.
Is it based on age when it comes to sizes, or is right. Because kids grow at different rates, right?
That's right. And so it's actually based on a few different factors. So we were, when we were tabulating this, we were really looking at, did they fit within the seats requirements and within the age, weight, or height for the law? So we were looking at those things. But we also know that the law is really the bare minimum. And we are, anticipating revisions to that law that better kind of reflect the evidence that we have about what stage a child should be in. And so for a rear-facing seat in Nova Scotia, a child's required to stay in a rear-facing seat until at least age 1 and 22 pounds. But they also need to stay as long as they can't move to a forward-facing seat until the seat requirements are met. And so about a third of all of the car seats in Canada now will say you can't use them forward-facing until age 2. And so that would become the new legal minimum. And we do expect that is a recommendation that children remain in a rear-facing seat really for as long as they still fit that larger rear-facing seat until age 2, 3, or even 4 years old. And then once they're in the forward-facing seat, we need them to stay in that forward-facing seat until they weigh at least 40 pounds or 18 kilograms and have the maturity to sit correctly in a booster seat. Because once they're out of that forward-facing seat with a 5-point harness and into a booster seat, they really have to be responsible in some ways for their own safety. An adult should always check and buckle them every time, but they have to be able to maintain that position and to keep the seatbelt exactly where it goes on the whole ride, even when falling asleep. And so we don't want to see kiddos moving into a booster seat until at least 4 years old, but even 5 years old is better. And again, they have to weigh at least 40 pounds or 18 kilograms. And some kiddos aren't ready for that stage until closer to age 6 or 7. And then finally, moving into a seatbelt, we want them to fit that adult seatbelt the same way that they would with a booster seat, but without a booster seat. So we want to see that lap belt low and across their hips. We want to see the shoulder belt between their neck and shoulder and touching their chest. We want their knees to bend comfortably over the edge of the seat so that they don't slouch and have that belt move up over their soft belly with their back all the way back against the vehicle seat. And most importantly, we want them able to maintain that position for the whole ride. And if they're not ready for that, then they need to stay in a booster seat for longer. And that usually comes between age 10 and 12. And it also usually comes with the height of 4 foot 9 inches tall or 145 centimeters.
Obviously, things have changed since I was a kid, and some people may need some additional information. Katherine, where is that available?
Absolutely. So Child Safety Link is, like you said, the Children's Injury Prevention Program based out of IWK. And we have a website, all of the social media, and also even a toll-free number as well in Atlantic Canada that people can call. I know there's not a lot of tolls anymore, but we do have a toll-free number that works in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland that parents, caregivers, and those who support them can call with their questions.
Katherine, appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's Katherine Hutka from the IWK. 80% not doing it right when it comes to the child safety seat. It doesn't make sense to put them in the safety seat if you're not using all of the safety precautions, right? Booster seat for somebody that's 12, that would be Parenting 101, let's just say. But anyway, she's right. It's all about safety. And it's also about convincing the kids to play along, right? Need to stop, take yet another break here on the program. On the other side of it, the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour welcomes improvements in the Workers' Compensation Act that have been dropped at the legislature, but say that more needs to be done, and that includes the introduction of some universal coverages. The president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, Danny Cavanagh, will be your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
All right, we're back. We know that the provincial legislature is in session and lots of different changes are coming, are forthwith at the Province House with changes and omnibus bills and all kinds of things getting packed into one. And one of the little nuggets that came out last week was a change to the Workers' Compensation Act. And the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour said it welcomed the government's announcement of improvements to the Act, which will provide improved support for injured workers and families. But the Federation is also warning that lowering employer rates is too early, and it will leave about 26% of workers outside the system, and they call that unacceptable. Very pleased to welcome back to the program the president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, and that is Danny Cavanagh. Danny, how are you?
Good, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. I guess let's start with the good things. There's some good news in this the change to the law.
Yeah, well, there is a bit of good things. Let's just maybe, if we could just start with WCB is meant to be a no-fault insurance system for people that get injured on the job or, God forbid, killed on the job. But, when it comes to those injuries, they gave up their right to sue an employer in return for no-fault compensation when they're covered. And one of the big things, as you pointed out, before I get into some of the positive things about this bill, is that it completely missed the mark on universal coverage. And probably I would suggest a lot of people in this province are unaware that about 26% of the entire workforce in the province is not covered by WCB. So there's many exemptions for different sectors, of the workforce that provide to the economy here in Nova Scotia. And I'm just going to give you one example.
Sure.
So one example would be agricultural workers. So, if you work on a golf course, an example, which is considered agriculture, and you get hurt on the job, you do not have WCB benefits. So we all know that, working on a golf course, and as an example, mowing the grass on golf courses is pretty dangerous work, or could be dangerous work. So if you get injured doing those kinds of things, right, that's set aside from regular farm work and the dangers that come with that. But anyway, it's that's a big miss that this legislation doesn't hinge on, and we just went through a complete review of the workers' compensation system, where there was many other things that a committee pointed out that needs to change in the workers' compensation system. But to your point about some of the positive things was the indexation of benefits, which is in this legislation, to 100% of the consumer price index is a good thing, although it's going to be capped as a 3% rate of inflation is a good thing. The expanded firefighter coverage for, I guess, people that work for Department of Natural Resources that do the firefighting in the woods fires in Shetch. And we've had a few of those this year, one pretty serious one happening now where, that's going to expand coverage for those folks for presumptive coverage and for the fire investigators that work for the province. So those are good. So modernization of the family definition. So updating the definition of a spouse or a common law partner is a needed move. Medical travel costs for some people and publicizing the penalties. So, there's a piece in there that requires employees who break safety laws be named, so that can help kind of deter, I guess, any violations to the Act.
Danny, why are there exemptions to WCB? Why are, for instance, you mentioned agriculture workers not included in it? Is it because it's family business, or is it because of the work they do, or is it something else?
No, there's been a number of exemptions for years to WCB, and I just don't think that the public is really aware of that.
Right.
And, we've been advocating for universal coverage, meaning all workers should be covered, but there's an unfairness in that for business as well. So, like if you work in a bank, as an example, you'd be exempt right now under the rules. And why should banks be exempt from WCB when other employers are required to pay it? So there's an unfairness to it all when you look at it from that perspective. And really, if they want to make sure WCB is funded like it should be, and it's funded quite well now, that's the reason there's some of these changes are going through. But to impose universal coverage so everybody has to pay the rates will also help with funding in the future.
Danny, you mentioned in your release that lowering that employer premium now is a bit early. You mentioned that that it's well funded, but there's concern about that.
Well, there is concern about that when you look at some of the things that they want to put in place currently and some of the other recommendations from the committee. That's going to take money. So we need to, I think, just cooler jets, because once you lower a rate, it's very hard to establish it back up to a higher rate again if WCB gets into trouble financially. So that's one why we need universal coverage to help with that financing, but also to make sure everybody's included like they should be through the WCB system, which, like I said, is a no-fault system. So if people get injured on the job, they need to have the right to be able to get WCB. They shouldn't be left struggling on their own after they get injured. And it also, I think the other caution here, Dan, is that it opens the door where if you aren't covered by WCB, you could, start a litigation in court proceedings to sue your employer for that injury.
Danny, whenever we talk about workers' compensation here on the program, I hear stories and absolute horror stories from people that are trying to navigate their way around the system. You say that you've just completed a complete review, and I do see that in the legislation that the appeals process is seeing an extension to it. Is there any inner workings in this that's going to make navigating that system easier? Well,
I think kudos to WCB and its board. They are coming up with things to help with that navigation process, although, we've been working with them on some of this stuff, and we want to make sure that it is easier to navigate. But, there's a huge distrust by a number of people on both sides of the fence, if I can put it that way, both employers and injured workers, who have a huge distrust in the system. And we need to do everything we can to build that trust back in the system. And some of the things that we're concerned about in this bill, we think will erode that trust even further. So as an example, in the bill, there's a clause in there that's going to give the government the right, as the government is what they call a self-insured employer, which is going to give them the right to be able to bail out from doing that kind of stuff. It's not clearly defined in the legislation what that means and what the government may choose to do, but it's clearly defined that if they choose to do something, they'll be able to take certain things out of legislation and put it into policy, meaning it opens the door for the government to change the rules for themselves. And we know that the government in the past has lost some cases through WCB because WCB is a tax-free benefit kind of stuff. So when people go on WCB, they don't have to pay taxes on their WCB benefits that they get. So the government could choose to maybe do something different there, because I think they are a bit concerned that, they feel, rightly or wrongly, that some people that go on WCB could possibly make more than they would than if they were working because of that. So we're concerned about what it is that they may choose to do in the future, and we're not sure what that could be, but this bill is going to open the door for sure to allow them to make some changes. So,
Danny, appreciate your time, sir.
Okay.
Have a good one. That is
Anytime,
Danny
Dan.
Cavanagh,
All right.
the president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labor. We're going to stop. We're going to get an update on the news. On the other side of it, it's time to open up those lines. It's time for the midweek. No, it's not. It's Wednesday, Dan. See? The Vanessa catches me again. We're going to open up the lines. That's for sure. But we're also going to welcome Dr. John Gillis into the studio because it's time for house calls. And don't forget the open hour will go at noon today, like I did. So house calls, then the open hour. If you have a medical-related question, here's your opportunity. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The perfect show is gone. We're back after the break.
Halifax.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday. It's just after the news at 11, so you know what that means. It's time now for house calls, and Vanessa is working very busily to get Dr. John on the line so that we can start that off and get you going. Don't forget that because of house calls at 11 today, noon, we'll open up the lines for the open hour. A couple of things that have drawn interest as of late today. Is, of course, the increase in minimum wage. I'm curious to see what you think about minimum wage. Are we going down the right route with it? Is $16 and change now for a minimum wage here in Nova Scotia? Are we going down the right way with it? Should we take a serious look at minimum wage, considering the Policy Center for Canadian Alternatives Policy Center says that we should be making $29.40 to live here, and minimum wage is $16 and change. So there's a big disconnect there. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that. And, of course, it's the Mid-Week Meltdown, so that gives you an opportunity to talk about just about anything you want to talk about. And, in fact, you can do me a little bit of a favor and catch me up on some of the things that I missed over the last couple of days because I have been away. And our good doctor was away as well. He was over there in Jolly Old for the World Cup final of the Women's World Cup. Dr. John, that must have been insane with 85,000 people there.
Yeah, it was a pretty amazing day. I mean, for a lot of reasons. First of all, an event of that magnitude is pretty awesome. But seeing that many people supporting women's sport at the highest level was incredible. I mean, that was double the highest number at any previous World Cup, and prior to that, the finals were getting 15,000 to 20,000 people. So it was a real testament to the growth of the sport and the excellence of both a lot of the teams there, but particularly the Canadian women and the English women. And the atmosphere was just fantastic. There was a lot of Canadians there, supporting, and unfortunate they fell a bit short, but they really did us proud, and it was a great day to be there.
What does this do? Like when the women's soccer team had their big push and won the gold and that kind of thing, we saw an increase in kids getting involved in soccer. Is the same thing? Is that the hope for the same thing for rugby to get the amateur level boosted again?
Well, absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges that this team faced was funding. With Rugby Canada and the team themselves, and with help from people across the country, they had to crowdfund about $1 million to even do this. Whereas the English team has tens of millions of dollars to fund their operations. So it was hopefully it's called attention to something that I think anybody who watched it found very exciting, and it will help not only participation in the sport, but help people realize that. We have to fund these folks. I mean, some of them are professionals that play in the English and the French leagues, but, the funding for the national team, a lot of it for this round was crowdfunded, and people in this area helped. They bought tickets on jerseys, and we did a couple of those draws. We did some donations. We did a few different things, sold some shirts, made some She the North shirts up, which was pretty cool. Those probably could have sold 10,000 units at Twickenham on Saturday, but we had a few of those kicking around, and it was pretty cool. But again, I hope it doesn't get lost, right?
Right.
Yeah. It was very exciting, but we need to support this amazing group of women and the ones coming behind them. And our men are looking forward to 2 years from now, and they will likely face some similar funding challenges. And hopefully, this has raised the profile. The Prime Minister was there, and he certainly, I think he heard it loud and clear from anybody he talked to. So hopefully, they'll be able to help as well.
Just last question, John, before we get into the medical stuff. Why is it that rugby is very popular? I mean, we have all high schools playing and everything else. Why does it struggle for funding?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated question. It's this country is so big, so they're trying to find a place for people to get together is expensive. So we've had players in the North American Pro League until Toronto folded. We've had players in Europe trying to find a strategy where people can be together, train together, and this sort of thing, and then rise to a level to get attention from corporate and fans is a challenge, right? To travel to Toronto to play a game if you're already at a pro level, that there's big money in that. But if you're trying to reach that next level, that's where the challenge lies. And as the profile comes up, more and more individual money will come in, corporate money will come in, and that becomes more viable. We talked to our friends in the UK and Ireland about this, and they groan about driving 3 hours to play a game. We're like, well, we have to get on a plane for 2 to 5 to 6 hours to play a game, and the cost is obviously exponentially higher.
Well, hopefully this raises the profile, and we see Canadians competing at the top of the World Cups for years to come, because it was certainly, I think it created a lot of rugby fans. I hadn't watched a lot of rugby on TV until this tournament started, so it certainly has converted me. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting, so hopefully it continues, as you say.
Dr. John's here to answer your medical-related questions. If you have a question for the good doctor looking for some advice, the lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Lines are wide open if you want to get on and get things started. Dr. John, I got an email question here. This actually was a carryover from the last time that we had our conversation, and it has to do with ear wax. It says, hey, Doc, I'm 20 years old. I usually use a Q-tip or even a tissue to clean my outer ear. But it is possible to see inside my ear, which is where there can be wax. Is there any way to clean this that is not dangerous? I'm worrying about sticking that Q-tip in too far.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to get a health professional to take a look at it. I mean, there are different tools that people use, but my personal cocktail is a third hydrogen peroxide and 2/3 water. Take a little dropper and fizz it in there, and it often does a nice job of fizzing it out of there. But it's still a good idea to get someone to take a look if you can. But generally the idea is don't push anything in there too far and, put yourself at risk of popping the eardrum or, in some cases just stuffing it in there further. But, sometimes people need to get it syringed out. Sometimes they need to get it actually pulled out with a little curette. But, you need someone who can see what they're doing to do that. But again, dropping a little bit of peroxide water in there creates a fizzing action and can be very helpful to get rid of it. So that's often what I recommend and get people to do.
Dr. John, I've seen a rise in popularity of this ear candling where they use heat to do that. Do you recommend that?
Seems kind of odd to me, but some people seem to think it works. So, it's generally not approved, and I think a lot of health professionals think it's kind of odd and a bit dangerous, but again, some people seem to swear by it, so I guess just buyer beware and be careful.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We'll take our first break right here on House Calls. Dr. John's back after. Lines are wide open again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. House Calls after the break. Welcome back. We waited for the laser beams. This is House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you have a medical-related question, here's an opportunity for you to get in. The lines are open. If you want to get some maybe second advice or get Dr. John to listen to what's going on with you, here's a great chance to do so. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Another email question, Dr. John. This one I know kind of comes up usually in the spring, but this reads, my husband has extreme seasonal allergies and suffered with it all his life. He's got allergy shots when he was younger and said it was such a good thing for him. Now he's gotten some other health problems and has gained some weight, so we've been trying to slowly tackle everything. I got him to an allergist who tested him and said his reaction was off the charts, like she'd never seen before, for things like grass and pollen, ragweed. But goes on to write that he's on a beta blocker, so they wouldn't give him an allergy shot. She's wondering, is there something that they can get him on so that he can get allergy shots or get him some relief?
Well, there's a lot of things that allergists will prescribe for allergies. I mean, I guess if she's asking, is there something else that they can put him on for the blood pressure? There's some risk of the cross-reactivity of the beta blocker and some of the things we use to treat, and I'm not sure what the pathway is in that idea. So I guess the answer to the question is to figure out why he's on a beta blocker, and it's a blood pressure drug, but we also use in people with heart disease. If it's just for blood pressure, they can probably find something else. If he has a cardiac problem, like a rate problem or something else, he may not be able to, come off the beta blocker, and they'd have to come up with other ways to treat the allergy. So there are other ways other than, treating the shots. The idea, I think one of the things, just looking it up here, is if you do have a reaction and you're on a beta blocker, it makes treating a severe reaction harder to treat because it can interfere with like the adrenaline that we would give. So it's probably a fairly unlikely thing. But, with people with severe allergies, and again, it depends, severe is relative. If severe hacking and coughing, that's distressing to an individual, but it's not life-threatening. If you get stung by a bee and your throat closes, you need to be able to treat that with adrenaline, and a beta blocker would be a reason not to do that. But, they just don't want to take the risk of, by giving you a shot, if you do have a bad reaction and you're on a beta blocker, it might be tougher to treat you. I think that's the rationale.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Seems that the email is quite popular today, Dr. John. This one comes to us from Sarah and reads, my husband has now been told he needs circumcision. He's wondering, and then she writes, I am too, if he's going to lose any kind of sexual sensation or pleasure because of it.
Well, I guess the question is why. There's a lot of reasons that's commonly done, obviously in kids, but there are, some situations where, the skin can become kind of scarred down or not allowing normal function where it needs to be removed. But again, it generally becomes, what's the reason behind it? Often it can improve sexual function because it allows, for a skin that is getting in the way to not be getting in the way anymore. Usually, if it's just skin being removed, it doesn't interfere with function because it's not getting the sensitive areas of the nerves, but it obviously has to be done quite carefully. But, again, I would have that conversation with the urologist around the reasons and risks and such. Important conversation to have, obviously.
Right. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Those are always not comfortable conversations, are they?
No, but hey, we answer all the questions we can, right?
Right. I got another one. Sorry, go ahead.
So last week it was testicles. This week it's foreskin. So
well, we're focusing on certain zones of the body at least. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This one, another email question, was a holdover from last week again, Dr. John. It said, hey, Dr. John, I stepped on in some mud and there was some rusty metal in it. This was last week. He said, I'd gone 3 days. after cleaning it out and watching it to see if there was any kind of infection. I had a tetanus shot when I was younger, but that was about 15 years ago. Do I need to get another tetanus shot, or is it good to go here?
No, typically you should get a tetanus shot every 10 years. It's usually, good to get it as soon as you can, but, within a couple days. But, if you're overdue, go ahead and get it done. If it's been 10 years, even if it's been a few days, it's still a good idea to update yourself and get that done.
Is that something you do routinely, or is that you use something in an instance like this where you step on something or whatever?
No, it's every 10 years, but, if you're within the 10 years, you're fine. If you're not, you should get it done. We routinely, when people cuts at the hospital, we give them shots to make sure they don't get lockjaw. I mean, lockjaw is very rare. I think I've maybe seen it once in all the time I've been doing this, but, it's probably not something that you really want.
And that's kind of what this leads to is lockjaw. Is that what tetanus is?
Yeah, that's what tetanus is.
And can you get that shot to get at the doctor's office, or can you get it at the pharmacy?
I think pharmacies stock it. We stock it in the office. They have it at the hospital. I mean, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of what is stocked in the office. As most people know, COVID is not. Flu shots typically are, and a variety of other things. But pharmacies are a very good resource, and have a lot of things, but check with them and or family doctor.
Dr. John, this is a little bit off the wall question. I was in Ontario this past weekend and watched a news story that they're going to look at expanding the prescription powers for pharmacists. And I know we have some here in Nova Scotia. Do you think that would alleviate some of the backlog that we're seeing if there was more powers granted to pharmacists?
I think it already is, to some degree. The discussion, I guess, is a couple things. I mean, it continues to drive me crazy. I get fax requests from pharmacies to refill stuff. There's got to be a better way to do this than sticking a piece of paper in my face. And I think we continue to work towards better record-keeping systems, but and they're trying their best, but they're still dealing with old technology in some of these cases to try and get docs and MPs the information they need to know a refill is needed. Certainly the ability to extend prescriptions if people can't get into their doctor or an NP is helpful. Diagnosing minor problems is helpful. The question comes back to at what point is it too much? At what point is a pharmacist fully trained to diagnose and treat problems? It seems very logical that minor things like strep throat, urinary infections, aches and pains, pretty straightforward. Our pharmacists can start working up rheumatoid arthritis and more complicated problems. I think there's a logical thought that no, that needs to be done with lab work by a specialist. How do we find that mix? It remains a challenge, but I think we should continue to explore it. And generally speaking, the work I've seen done by the pharmacies in these matters has been excellent.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Another email question today, Dr. John. It says, hey, Dr. John, I walk a lot, almost daily. I used to wear leather-heeled shoes to school, and eventually I started to have this poking sensation in the middle of my left sole whenever I flex my foot. It feels like my bone's poking at my sole. It doesn't hurt when I wear flat shoes, and I've been experiencing this for a couple of years now. I've thought that about it being a metatarsal stress fracture or plantar fasciitis, and not bad enough to warrant a checkup, but it's also a big bother when I put my heels on.
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like it's footwear dependent and position dependent. I think a stress fracture would be less likely. We see those in distance runners and people on their feet constantly. Fasciitis is probably a more likely thing. I mean, optimizing your footwear if you know what's causing it. Don't want to kill the fashion vibe, but if it's causing a problem, try to minimize that type of shoe, and find ways to treat it, to stretch it, to take anti-inflammatories, ice, topical anti-inflammatories, that sort of thing, to try and manage it if in fact rocking the heels is important.
I hear a lot of talk about plantar fasciitis. What is it?
Who are you talking to?
Well, people here at work
you got to get more going on in your life.
Well, I spend a lot of time at home, Dr. John. I'll admit that. But people that are active, they're runners and such. They say they had to get the insoles to help prevent it. What is it? Is it a stretch of the tendon?
Plantar fascia is sort of the fibrous material that is on the bottom of your foot. It kind of goes from your forefoot to your heel, and can get inflamed from walking, running, but it can, depending on how people's feet are, whether they're flat or they have bad arches, some people can get it from doing very little. So it's an inflammation there, and can be tough to treat because some injuries we say, well, if your elbow hurts, stop golfing, stop playing tennis, rest it. It's hard to rest your feet unless you can walk around on your hands all day. But in a lot of cases, putting in insoles that provide a little more padding, changing the angle of the foot a little bit, wearing different shoes. I mean, similar with Achilles problems. I used to have terrible Achilles problems. I don't wear, I'm not wearing stilettos around, but I tend to wear running shoes, or if I'm wearing a flatter shoe, I'll put like a Dr. Scholl's in there just to raise my heel a bit. And I haven't, knock on wood, haven't had problems because of that. But it's a mechanical thing, and people have the problem. They want to look at their footwear, the angle of their feet, and some of the treatments to help with it.
902-405-6000 is the number. Dr. John will be back after the news. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is House Calls. He's Dr. John Gillis, and he's here for the next 30 minutes to answer those medical-related questions that you should have. If you have something you'd like to get the doctor's advice on, perfect opportunity right here, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Dr. John, we're going to go right to the phones. We welcome Ann to the show. Ann, how are you?
Hey, Phil. Well, since you're laying here being sad, because I give you some hard love here, they can make you.
I think we're going to put you on hold here, Ann, because there's something going on in there on your phone there. Vanessa's going to sort that out. Sorry about that, Dr. John. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. If you have a medical-related question, lots of lines open for you here to join the show and get it asked and get it off your mind. We're just waiting for Vanessa to sort things out here with Ann, and we'll move forward. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is the number. Dr. John, we were talking about plantar fasciitis before the break there. You mentioned an insole. Can you get that anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, you can pick up Dr. Scholl's insoles, most any drugstore, either the full-length ones or just a little heel lift.
Right.
You need something more detailed. You have to go to a podiatrist or, some of the physio/bracing places do orthotics that are more custom to people's feet. And not everybody needs that, but some people do.
That was my question is it obviously the Dr. Scholl's thing would be the first go, but if it doesn't work, then it's to the podiatrist, correct?
Podiatrist, or yeah, some of the physio spots do it as well. Things that are more custom. I've tried orthotics a couple times in the past. I actually didn't like them. I just preferred the more generic job, but everybody's different.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's try Ann again. Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your question for the doctor, please.
Yeah. Okay. I had an ostomy bed put on a couple of years ago, and it started giving me. I started getting problems. I started having problems, and you're there, are you?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, yeah, you're there. Okay. I started having problems with it, so I went and I had a scope done, and then I had a CAT scan done, and I found out that I do have cancer down there. So I can't. The doctor, the surgeon, doesn't even have me down for surgery at all. And my own family doctor, he can't give me anything for pain because he's not allowed to, because he's had his license taken away for for giving narcotics, and I'm laying here in pain, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do.
Well, I guess the first thing is when you say the surgeon doesn't have you down for surgery, do you know why? I mean, do you see them?
No, I just called and I asked the receptionist, and she said, no, you're not down here for surgery. She said you might have to go to Halifax, and that was it. And my doctor is so hard to get a hold of. What?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sorry you're going through that. I mean, there's no magic.
And I can't get anything for pain. If I go to the hospital, I'm going to sit there for 10 hours, and they're not going to give me anything for pain anyways. I just lay in bed all the time. I don't know what to do.
You don't know that someone you see at the hospital won't give you something. I mean, if you've got a legitimate reason, people will consider it. And if your own doctor can't do anything, I would try to follow up with whoever scoped you and diagnose that, and find out what the plan is. But failing that, you may have to go to the hospital to get rechecked.
Best of luck, Ann, and we hope it all works out for you. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome James to the show. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Your question, please.
A question regarding vaccinations. Anti-vaxxer people are out there, and the President of the United States recently took the occasion to, if not specifically condemn the MMR vaccine, to at least say, don't get it in combination, split them up. In other words, giving free medical advice recently. So I'm wondering if Dr. Gillis has some thoughts on the best way to reply if an anti-vaxxer, gives their speech about vaccines, give you terrible reactions and can kill you and so on. It's because the topic is out there, and I'm wondering how it can best, how anti-vax sentiment, and we're beyond COVID, we're into MMR and other ones now, how anti-vax sentiment can best be addressed.
That's a tough one. You would want to talk about logic and evidence, but this has transcended that in many ways into emotion and politics. And when we get to that stage, it's very tough. I mean, I usually encourage people to look at the Public Health Agency of Canada websites, for not only vaccine information, but the research and the evidence behind it. The Center for Disease Control in the U.S., despite recent attempts to, stock it with people who are, less inclined to follow science, is still a good resource for understanding vaccines and the research behind them. And, just looking at the trends, these conditions were eliminated. Measles in particular was gone, and now we're seeing cases all over North America because of this, and, sadly cases of people dying. It's not hard to find it, but again, it's very hard to convince people to look at evidence when they've got their minds made up. It's frustrating.
Thanks for the call, James. Appreciate it. Dr. John, would be remiss if I didn't ask how the situation was in the ER. How is the viral levels, and is it still? I would imagine we're getting into the busy season now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it comes and goes. I mean, I was there yesterday. It was quite busy, but we weren't back completely blocked with admitted patients. So I've said many times, we can keep up with a lot of the volume if we have a place to see people, and the nursing staff and the paramedic staff and the other staff aren't overloaded taking care of admitted patients and can actually take care of the actual ER patients that are coming through the door. It was a busy day, but we were able to keep up. I wasn't seeing a lot of viral stuff yesterday, but again, it comes and goes. It varies wildly.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back to the emails, Dr. John. It says, hey, Dr. John, I was rear-ended while stopped completely by a truck. While it wasn't a high-speed crash, there was a bit of force involved. Now, since the accident, my back pain has had constant aches, I went to the ER immediately after the accident where a CT on my full back and head showed no abnormalities. I've been treated with naproxen, ibuprofen, and acetaminophen and heating pads to try help the inflammation and pain. At what point should I seek further care, and would something like an orthopedic urgent care be appropriate route to take?
I mean, the problem, any of these accidents, I mean, some people get a lot of problem. Some people get very little problem. Some of it depends on the force. Some of it depends on your head and neck musculature. Women tend to be more affected than men, sometimes because their traps, their head and neck musculature does not stabilize their head to the same degree, but that's not always the case. And then it's a matter of, simply finding means of diagnosing the problem and starting a treatment plan. I mean, I often recommend people start with massage and physio or chiro to help, alleviate symptoms, and talk to your own provider about, the basics of pain management, starting with things like Tylenol and, ibuprofen, 2 different drugs. You're not going to get autism from the Tylenol, despite what the Grand Orange likes to tell us. And then up from there. Now, I'm not sure what I don't know what an orthopedic clinic would do for, some upper back pain from this type of thing. That's not where I would start. I mean, if things progress to a severe level, if it's a severe, if there's a spinal injury or if there's a disc problem, then at some point a spine surgeon, which could be an orthopedist or a neurosurgeon, might be involved. But that's not typically the starting point. It's manual therapy, mobility, and treating the pain to try and keep people moving.
Dr. John, the email writer said that they're being treated with naproxen, acetaminophen, and ibuprofen. There's no problem using all 3 of those drugs together?
So naproxen and ibuprofen are the same class of med. I wouldn't be using both.
Right.
Tylenol is obviously a different class. We often suggest using them interspersed with each other together. That's perfectly fine. So Tylenol with ibuprofen or Tylenol with naproxen, but you wouldn't want to use 2 anti-inflammatories, what we call NSAIDs, together. And just getting some good advice on that combo is important. Dosing is important. I mean, people often, they take 1 ibuprofen, 200 milligrams a day, and wonder why they're not feeling, magnificent. And that's not enough. The dose depends on, a little bit mainly on weight, but also on age and other comorbidities. But 1,600 milligrams a day for an acute injury, or even more in some cases, is not unreasonable. But getting that information and coming up with a plan, and pharmacists can give you good advice on those things, as noted, if you're looking for proper dosing advice.
And ibuprofen and acetaminophen are pain relievers, but they go about it different ways, correct?
Yeah, they completely different means of action, but are both painkillers, and are both effective and good for different reasons. For acute injuries, anti-inflammatories tend to be more helpful because injuries imply inflammation. But not everybody can take anti-inflammatories. Bother people's stomach. They can cause blood pressure, kidney problems with chronic use. Tylenol, despite some recent BS, frankly, remains one of the safest drugs to take as long as it's taken within the right dose range. After that range, it can become damaging to the liver. But the data on what's safe is pretty clear.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. John's back after the break.
Facts.
All right, just a few minutes left here in House Calls. Dr. John is here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Dr. John got an email from somebody said, hey, Doc, I'm a 34-year-old man. I've got pitting that's appearing in my fingernails over the last year or so. It started on my right index finger, then moved to my left index finger. It appears to maybe be starting on my middle fingers on both hands, but hasn't developed into the same extent. Doctor didn't give me much to go off and referred me to see a dermatologist, but can't be seen until next year. Doctor mentioned that either psoriasis or a form of arthritis. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, those things are associated with it. I mean, I guess if you're not having problems with those things, psoriasis meaning, rashes and thickening of the skin all over the body, or, arthritis, what we'd think of as, joint pain or inflammation, it type of thing that, you don't want to ignore. But, there are some things that can be done to test for different types of arthritis. There's some blood tests that can help. And some other immune conditions that can cause this. If you're not having any symptoms, waiting to see a specialist is probably fine. But in the meantime, there may be some blood tests, that can help in the meantime. But, the process has been started. As long as you're not having any other systemic symptoms, probably waiting, for a bit is okay. If anything changes, get it rechecked and expedited.
Is psoriasis a common thing? Are you there, Dr. John?
Yeah, I just clipped out for a second. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
Is psoriasis common? Is it something that happens all the time?
Oh, yeah. We see a lot of people with psoriasis, and, to varying degrees. There are people with just a few, patches here or there along the body. There are people with debilitating patches. Basically, it's a situation where the body kind of attacks its own skin and causes these sort of dry, scaly areas. And, it can be quite debilitating. Now, the treatment has come a long way with anti-immune drugs and, ultraviolet treatment and a lot of other things. So you don't see the real bad cases too much anymore. But, it can be debilitating for people, and important to get ahead of it before it gets that way.
Is it viral? Is it something in the environment that causes it, or how do you get it?
No, it's what we call an autoimmune condition, when
right.
basically the body kind of mistakes, what is supposed to be there as abnormal and attacks it. In this case, it's the skin, and it causes thickening, inflammation, and there are many different autoimmune conditions, but there are different triggers for different types of autoimmune disease, but not thought of as being it's not a viral thing.
Dr. John, we're going to give you a few minutes back, and we'll look forward to chatting next week.
It is great to chat as always, and talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
That is Dr. John Gillis here every Wednesday to answer your medical-related questions. Now we're going to, of course, open up the telephone lines after the news at noon for the open hour, the Mid-Week Meltdown. It might be a good opportunity for you to bring me up to speed on some of the stuff that I missed over the last couple of days. A couple other things that I'm curious to your thoughts on are the increase, of course, today in minimum wage. The province, for the second time this year, has increased minimum wage. It's now just over $16 an hour. I'm curious to see what you think about minimum wage. We know that minimum wage is I just mentioned, $16 and change an hour. But we've heard time and time again, and different studies have been done, that in order to live here, not comfortably, but in order to be able to function, you need to make $29.40 an hour. So there's a rather large disconnect between what minimum wage is and what a living wage is. Do you think that we need to move to a living wage model? And I don't necessarily suggest that we need to make $30 an hour, the minimum wage that you can pay somebody. But there are different jurisdictions around the world that have different minimum wage rates. If you live in an urban area, for instance, like you live in Halifax, the minimum wage would be more than if you lived in rural Nova Scotia, because the theory is the cost of living is more expensive in the city, although I'll dispute that. Or should we move it to a living wage? And should that be something that gets adjusted every year? I get it. From small businesses, I really do understand that, it's not necessarily the amount of money that it's going up, but it's just the lack of understanding and the lack of knowing what's happening so that you can effectively budget for that. I get it. Numbers from the CFIB showed that, I think, was it 56% of their respondents to their survey said that they weren't able to absorb that increase in minimum wage, and are going to pass that along to you and I. It's always been that vicious circle, right? you get an increase in minimum wage, and then small business says, well, I can't eat that. So I got to pass that on to my customers, and then the person that got the minimum wage costs more to buy the goods that they use every day. Your thoughts on minimum wage? Do we need to do a rethink here? Because let's face it, it's $16, and even if it was $19 an hour, I think Ontario's up to just about $18 now. It's just not enough. You can't certainly live on it, and people that are living on it are working 2 and 3 and sometimes even more jobs in order to be able to do that. Your thoughts on minimum wage? Also, I know this is a couple of days old now, but I was away. Did you see the 60 Minutes interview with the Utah governor? I think it was the season premiere of 60 Minutes this week, and I watched the entirety of it, and it was fascinating to me. The governor of Utah, of course, splashed into the spotlight in the wake of the Charlie Kirk shooting. Spencer Cox is his name. But Spencer Cox has been working for many, many years to try and tamp down the heated rhetoric between Democrats and Republicans in the United States for years before this, and tried to do the same thing in the aftermath of the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Steve Bannon called him a disgrace. Now, we know that Canada is not a two-party system, but let's be frank. There really is, at this point, only two alternatives on the federal scene until the NDP chooses a new leader. They've got a lot of work to do. The Greens are almost irrelevant at this point, although, they have a place in the Canadian parliamentary system, that's for sure. Hyperpartisanship. His whole thing is that we've lost the ability, and I'm paraphrasing here, we've lost the ability to have a different point of view, but to listen to other people and their opinions. Something that we've seen here for a number of years. Have we lost the ability to listen? Have we lost the ability to be able to have a discussion or a debate on something, but listen to the other side? Something you might want to talk about in the open hour. The lines are now open. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The Midweek Meltdown after the news. All right, welcome back. Lots to talk about here. It's the Midweek Meltdown. Telephone lines are open. There's lots of lines available if you want to get on. You can talk about whatever it is on your mind. A couple of things I'm very curious to hear about. We know that minimum wage has increased today here in Nova Scotia. I wonder if it's the right approach. I wonder if maybe we need to relook at things or maybe build a tier system into it, because if you believe the numbers from the Center for Policy Alternatives suggesting that you need to make, $29.40 an hour in order to be able to function here in HRM. And then you look at minimum wage, which is set at $16 and change now. There's a pretty large disconnect between that and the vicious circle, right? We start increasing minimum wage, then the cost of goods goes up because the business owners want to make up, they won't eat it, want to make that up, and that gets passed on. So are you really any further ahead? Because the cost of the things you buy every day will go up. I was going to say milk, but we know that those prices are held. So, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like it's just a vicious circle with regards to the minimum wage. I wonder if it's time that we take a serious look at it. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Also, I mentioned it off the top of the program quickly before we go to the phone lines. Of course, our thoughts going out to those that are being impacted by that wildfire in Kings County right now. We just heard an update there, a couple hours ago, that more evacuations are underway. That wildfire is continuing to grow. We're expecting to see an update on it a little bit later today. If we see anything new on that, we certainly will pass it along. Being that I was away when this fire kind of broke out, I was watching it like the rest of you are watching the social media and the releases from the government. And it appears to me, and I certainly stand to be corrected, but it appears to me that the initial attack on that fire was fairly successful, right? They managed to not contain it, but they managed to kind of get a grip on it. And then, as is this procedure, firefighters leave the woods in the dark because it's dangerous. They did say there were still some hot spots on that fire, and then the wind changed and that thing blew up. I wonder if Nova Scotia had its own water bomber or water bombers, with all of the volume of water that those things can. I get the helicopters. I know the helicopters have worked in the past, and I know that they're very precise, and I know that they can pick up water from little bodies of water, and I've heard all of the arguments. But I wonder if we'd had access to our own water bomb. We'd have to wait for one to come from Newfoundland, Labrador, from New Brunswick, or and I think those 802 planes are back from the territories that we saw in the initial attack on the Long Lake wildfire in Annapolis County. I wonder if that would have changed the situation at all. I mean, I get it. Hindsight's 20/20. I know. But, the premier, when asked about the water bomber question, was like, well, we're always kind of looking at it, but, there's 7 years to get one. And, hey, we have really good resources available to us. But I wonder if we have one on station, if that changes things at all. Your thoughts on Nova Scotia having its own water bomber. And the third little bit of information that I shared with you earlier was that 60 Minutes interview with Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, who, of course, was front and center in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk shooting. And he says that the American political system, and I'm paraphrasing, is broken, and the expansive rhetoric is creating dangerous situations. And as we've said here many times on this program, if America sneezes, Canada catches a cold, right? And now that we're almost into a two-party system here federally, right? The NDP have some work to do, as do the Greens. And let's face it, the last election campaign, or maybe even the one before that federally here in Canada, things got a little bit nasty. Do you remember the Trudeau protests? And then some of the explosive rhetoric that was happening here. This governor has been working hard to tamp that down. In fact, appeared in his own campaign ads for re-election with the Democrat candidate. And said, look, we're going to disagree. We're going to, strongly share our opinions. But at the end of the day, is it really hurt just to listen to everybody and kind of get along? I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Of course, it's the open hour. You can talk about whatever's on your mind. Matthew, how are you?
Not bad, sir. How you making out?
I'm okay. I got a little bit of a cold, so I'm struggling here a little bit.
I'm the same way as we speak. My concern is with the minimum wage. I've traveled the world in different places, and for instance, one of the most expensive places I've been is Singapore.
Right.
And their minimum wage is roughly $8 an hour, but yet it's one of the most expensive places to live. Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of poverty? No, there's not. It's called incentive for people to further their education, to continue up that ladder faster at a younger period in their life. Now, I'm just using that as an example because minimum wage isn't supposed to be a career option. It's not supposed to be your full-time employment. It's supposed to be mostly part-time employment. And years ago, when I say years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the living wage was $21, and our minimum wage was around $14.85 or something. And everyone's like, oh, well, see, we need to get to $21. I said, well, if you put the minimum wage up to $21 or even up a bit, I said it's got to tenfold that on the living wage.
Yep.
And boom, here we are, fast forward. minimum wage is $16.50, and the living wage went up $8.
Yep.
So it goes up $1.50 over that period, and on the living side of things, it's gone up $8. Because a lot of businesses like Sobeys, I know everyone hates big grocery stores and all that. The grocery side of the Empire company, their profits are in the range of 1.8 to 3.5%. So whenever you have increases on minimum wage, it has to be pushed on. If you're in other businesses like the food and beverage restaurants,
right,
they too work on a 4 to 5% profit basis. If you start increasing minimum wage up, that has to get pushed on, which then drives into the consumer. So the consumer is the one that ultimately pays in the end, and it makes it more expensive for anyone to live.
Right. It's that circle. It's the
minimum wage.
That vicious circle, right?
And that's the part. Everyone hears that, well, if it's $29 living wage, well, let's make minimum wage as close to that as we can get it. Well, no, because the closer you make minimum wage to that, then that means, okay, then your living wage is going to be that much higher again. What we should be doing is trying to incentivize people to get out of the minimum wage mindset. Try to better themselves. Don't just do the bare minimum because that's all I'm getting paid for. Try to go harder, faster, longer. It does get noticed by employers. I'm an employer myself, and I can tell you, usually I'm proactive, and I'll see different staff, different team members going at it, and I'll pull them into the office, and I'll give them the raise because, you know what, that gets noticed, as opposed to let's just, you put your time in, let's just increase your wage for minimum wage because, you know, everyone's going to yell and scream, and minimum wage is going to go up. No, I don't have a single person on my staff that works for minimum wage. That's the end of that.
Yeah. Matthew, I appreciate it, sir.
All right, sir. Sorry about ramming it all in such a
Oh, no,
period.
I get it. I totally appreciate it. Appreciate your call. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Matthew raising some very interesting points there, but just going back to our interview with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, small businesses in Nova Scotia reporting that 35%, so 3.5 out of 10, every 10 businesses in Nova Scotia employ people at minimum wage. So is it a business model issue, right? Or is it is that the 3.5 or 4% of 40% of businesses, sorry, that require that in order to make a go of it? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Barry, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
The water bombers. I'm glad you brought that up. The helicopters that we have here in Nova Scotia carry 150 gallons in those buckets.
Yep.
Newfoundland water bomber carries 1,500 gallons. When we had the fire out here a few years ago, I was watching across the lake here, and there was a puff of smoke halfway up the hill. I'm on Stillwater Lake. And the helicopter came along, and he filled his bucket 10 times and doused that puff of smoke. Couldn't get it out, and all of a sudden a Newfoundland water bomber flew over my house, and he put that helicopter to shame. It's just ridiculous that we have these helicopters with, bags hanging under them. And another thing that's a little curious is there's a plant in Calgary that's making the new version of the Newfoundland water bombers. The Newfoundlands are 415s. These are 515s.
Yep.
And they've taken orders from all over the world except Canada. And just a few months ago, or maybe 1 month ago, Manitoba ordered 3. And since they waited so long, they got to wait until 2032.
7 years. Minimum 7 years. That's crazy.
Yep. It's just ridiculous to think they're made right here in Canada, and we don't have enough common sense to, get them or use them ourselves. And I think Mark Carney, instead of spending all this money on NATO and everything else, he should spend a good chunk of it on increasing the production of these water bombers. In other words, if it needs another plant, build another plant. But Canada, I look at a map every morning that shows a dot for every forest fire in Canada, and it's just incredible how many there are. And we're losing all these trees that generate oxygen, and when they burn, of course, they produce carbon dioxide. It's a serious situation, and I can't believe that the federal government doesn't take over the firefighting situation in Canada and do something about it.
Barry, appreciate it, sir.
Okay.
Have a good day. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back. Dan Olstrand along with you here. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. It's the Mid-Week Meltdown. Your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Minimum wage, water bombers. And now Eddie wants to talk about hunting. Eddie, how are you?
Hi.
What's on your mind?
How are you?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
Yes. I'm talking about the reduce of the wildlife between the forest fires and the ice storms.
Okay.
That they can't get around. And now to allow a 12-year-old to go hunting, that's a little out of hand. Monday we had a caller come in that worked for Lands and Forests, and he said the bears are more scared of the people, but when you call them, the first thing they do, they shoot the bear.
Right.
So I don't really get the situation that they're allowing that.
I don't follow you with the change in age to a reduction in animals.
Well, the Nova Scotia government allows a 12-year-old, another family member, to go hunting.
Yep.
So that's two or an extra animal towards the family.
Right.
That they're allowed to have.
Okay.
And if something with reducing of the fires and looking for food, they're going to bring the animals out towards the people more, and it's going to be a hard thing for the wildlife to survive.
So you don't think that it was a wise idea to reduce the age from 16 to 12?
No.
Okay.
Besides, 12 is a little young for a gun.
Well, but you're going to be with an adult, right?
Yeah, you're going to be with an adult, but it's still a little risky for a 12-year-old. But anyway.
Okay.
Like when they go to cigarettes and stuff and like that, they older, what is it, up to 16 is when they usually let them to have a gun. But anyway, okay.
Appreciate it, Eddie. Have a good one.
Okay.
902-405-6000. In case you're curious what we're talking about, the provincial government last week put some amendments out that would change the wildlife regulations that would reduce the minimum age from 16 to 12 for hunting deer or bear. That's consistent with hunting small game. That's youth under 18, though, must still hunt under the direct supervision of a licensed adult hunter to ensure that they're being safe and to obviously give them some mentoring. They still have to undergo a hunter education course, very much like you and I and everybody else have, and the firearm safety course are still mandatory. Also, part of that legislation, something that I've been advocating for since coming to Nova Scotia 14 or so years ago, they added 11 more Sundays per year to hunting. So Sunday hunting, for the most part, is going to be permitted, and they also extended the deer hunting season by a week. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 is the number. Let's welcome Barry to the show. Barry, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. You?
Good. What's on your mind?
This governor, I mean, he won't be around next election because he's not agreeing with the Republican way.
Well, he's a two-termer, so he's done anyway.
Yeah. The problem, if you heard Trump with the military yesterday, which was almost, they're going to practice with in Democratic states. That's where they should do the war games. I mean, it's reached the stage where the generals didn't even clap when he come out, which he was annoyed about. But they have ice in their antagonize the people so they'll do something to them, and then he can bring the military in and intimidate the people. I mean, he's trying to take over the country. It's reached a stage now that nobody's even arguing the point that it's a regime. They can't, because it's got to that stage. And unless the people finally get fed up and say, enough's enough, and the generals do their duty and stop this madman, what's the good of... they're not going to tone down.
I don't know. I don't think we want to see a coup, do we?
Do you want to see the end of the elections? Did you hear his speech with the generals yesterday?
I did, but let's, like Donald Trump or not, he's an elected president of the United States, right?
He wants military, the army, into cities.
Well, he's already got him in cities. He's got him in Washington. He's talking about bringing them to Chicago. He's got them in Portland. It's already happening.
Democratic states.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing, eh?
Yeah.
And ICE is just a fancy word for Gestapo.
Well, I don't think I want to go that far either. Anyway, Barry, appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I get it. I understand that there's a lot of frustration with Donald Trump out there, but he is a duly elected president of the United States, and they do have mechanisms in the United States to do that, and to have a coup is not on. But it goes to my point, is that, and to what the governor of Utah said in the 60 Minutes interview, it's rhetoric that fires people like Barry up, and then we see what happens, right? We've lost the ability to have a conversation. Like even the terminology that Barry was using, that's what happens. That's my point. We've lost the ability to just have a conversation and, hey, how about listen to a difference of opinion? We've degraded to the point now where it's I'm right or I'm going to yell louder. And that's just not healthy. Taking a break. Midweek Meltdown continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. It's the Midweek Meltdown. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. The number's 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right back to the phones and welcome Alan to the program. Alan, how are you?
Not bad, Dan. Yourself?
I'm okay. What's on your mind?
Minimum wage, I think that we tend to be looking at it all in the reverse that we should be. And what I mean by that is that we shouldn't be looking at what a person is paid as much as what they take home, what they get. It doesn't matter if you get paid $32 an hour if you're only taking home $12 of that $32.
Too much tax.
And we have listen. Minimum wage when I started working in the early 70s for construction was $2 an hour.
Right.
All right. You could buy a house, et cetera, for $20,000.
Yep.
You look at where things are going, and it's very easy to see. I mean, back in the 60s, in high school, I took macroeconomics. It's a very simple process. All you're doing is increasing the cost of everything. If you raise minimum wage within 16, maybe 24 months, the price of everything knocks on and goes through. So the person who is making minimum wage isn't any farther off.
Absolutely.
However, the government has generated more income because they're taking income tax.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned, if any government in this country and any province in this country is interested in actually helping people, then the first thing they would do is stop it. And if they say, let's use a low figure, and we say that $30,000 is a living wage. All right. Nobody's going to argue with it being lower than 30,000 probably. So if we say 30,000 is a living wage, why is it that the provincial and federal governments both start deducting income taxes and taking money from people who have taxable incomes of 14,000 or more?
Right. Yep.
So a person with a taxable income of 14,000 has to give some of that money to the government. Then the government takes that and they go through layers upon layers of collecting the money, identifying that it should be collected, collecting the money, doing something with the money while it's being collected, identifying which programs it should go to, sending it through, and maybe of that tax dollar that's taken in, maybe there's 50 cents, maybe if we're lucky, but I suspect it's more like 15 or 20 cents left to go back to the people that need it. Why take it from them in the first place?
Makes a lot of sense, Alan. It really does. It's, if we set a living wage and that's where the deductions start, I think that really does make a lot of sense.
Oh, sure. And I mean, the fact is you just simply say we have governments that taxes are like crack cocaine, unfortunately.
Yep.
To politicians.
Highly addictive.
Extremely. And income tax was a temporary measure. There's still that wording in the Canadian Income Tax Act. It was a temporary measure.
It was designed to pay for the First World War. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just like with the McDonald Bridge. That was supposed to be paid ages and ages ago. But what we did at the time, we couldn't find anybody to finance it in Canada, so we financed it in Germany. The Deutschmark took off like crazy. So 50 years later, we still owed the same amount as when we built it.
Right.
Those are things that common sense, from people that are in those industries can figure out fairly quickly and fairly easily, but we tend not to do that.
Good call, Alan. Appreciate
it. Anyway, you take care.
Have a fantastic day. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Craig to the show. Craig, how are you?
Good, yourself?
Good. What's on your mind?
I'm just calling there about the fellow that called in there earlier saying about the 12-year-olds being kind of young to hunt.
Right.
I've been a sportsman now I'm 57 now, so I've been at it since I've been 12. The legal age for small game
was
like 14 back in that time. And like you said, there was a hunter safety course, which was also, at that time, it was also about firearms. I don't know if it still is or not.
No, you got to take two courses. I did mine about 10 years ago. You have to do, or not even, you have to do the hunter safety course, and then you have to do the Canada Firearms Safety course.
Okay, well, it used to be all pretty much the same thing when I did it. So.
Yep.
And I don't know. I don't really have to say this, but the woke people and the liberals, I don't know. They've have their opinions, and their opinion is their opinion, and it has to be right, as you said. Like, we've lost the point of having conversations.
Well, that's just it, right? Like, it's my way or the highway.
Right, and I don't know. Just as a point, in defense of saying like a 12-year-old's too young for a gun, I would say 12-year-old has really no comprehensive of what gender they want to be. But that is okay now. You know what I mean? Like, not to be like, not to say anything bad against it, but I mean, you can't have it both ways here, really, people.
Thanks for the call, Craig. Appreciate it, sir.
All right.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think that's apples and oranges, in my opinion. This is something that we teach. We teach firearm safety. We teach how to safely use them. We teach what these things are used for and the proper application thereof. And maybe, just maybe, if we educate our kids younger on the use of firearms and how to properly use them and store them and all of the things I listed before, then maybe that is going to benefit us in the future. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Ken to the show. Ken, how are you?
Good, Dan.
What's on your mind?
I'm just curious. I just asked Vanessa if you guys had approached this topic before. The guy who killed a 21-year-old here in town, hit a bunch of vehicles. She was embedded in his windshield, and he still kept going until he hit another vehicle.
Is that the one down by the hospital?
Yes.
Okay.
4 years in jail he got, and 10-year driver suspension.
Doesn't seem like a lot, does it? Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And, it reminds me of a meme I saw on Facebook there the other day. It says, if bartenders can be charged for people who left the bar, and got in an accident or killed somebody or whatever, then the bartender or the server can be charged. Then the judge who let the guy out of jail should be charged if he goes out and kills again. I mean, it's the liberal way to.
Ken, is it the judge? Ken, is it the judge? Is it the Crown attorneys, or is it the laws that need to be changed?
Well, it's a whole lot. My vehicle got broken into down close to the bridge, down close to the DoubleTree a few years ago, and the policeman that came up, he told me, he says, "I'm pretty sure I know who broke into your vehicle." He said, "But the judge is just going to let him off anyway."
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe Jim can call in and give us a little better view on this thing or whatever. But, I mean, if it's people coming from away and they're doing this and they're coming in and killing people or whatever, why are we housing them in jail? Why are they not on a plane going back to their hometown? And if they're from here, they're originally from here, or whatever the case may be, why are they only getting a 4-year jail sentence, 2 years with good behavior, and he'll be back out on the streets? And do you really think he's going to say, "Oh, no, the judge was right, I shouldn't drive for 10 years"? Right?
Right.
It's crazy. The justice system is a joke in the province and right across Canada, right? Nobody's scared of the cops. Nobody's scared of a judge. They can come to Canada and they can do whatever they want, right? We go over to foreign countries or whatever, and you know this from your military service and that. You go over to some countries and you speak up and they'll lob off your head.
Well, I've never been to a country where that'll happen, Ken, but I'm not suggesting that it doesn't. Hey, I appreciate the call, sir.
Yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We sometimes, I think, unfairly blame the Crowns when there's an unsuccessful prosecution, right? There's how many high-profile cases have we seen it? And sometimes we blame the judges in a case, but they have to work within the confines of the law. And I know that the laws in these cases, there's much stronger penalties and so on and so forth, and not being in the sentencing hearing and not hearing the decision or reading it, don't know what led to that decision. But that being said, sometimes I think it's unfair for us to blame the judges and the Crowns when the laws need to be strengthened, right? And that doesn't fall on the Crowns or the judges. That falls on the politicians. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break.
Facts.
All right, just a few minutes left here in the Wednesday edition of the program. It's the Mid-Week Meltdown. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is the number. Let's welcome Al to the show. Al, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to talk about the 12-year-olds being able to carry a firearm and hunt.
Yep.
So when I was that age, like a previous caller, it was all in one. It was the hunter safety course with the firearms as well as very safe in the woods kind of course in the mid-'80s.
Yep.
And I know it's changed. I guess the thing about it, I would support my 12-year-old, she is 12, to go hunting. I haven't hunted myself in years.
Mm-hmm.
I have no desire to anymore, but if she wanted to take it up, I would support her.
Yep.
The only caveat I would have is back then, I had a lot of people my age that took it when they were 14 and 15 and 16 who failed and had to take it several times. And I just, with today's culture of not wanting to fail people, I hope that wouldn't be a thing. Why they wouldn't fail people who...
No. Yeah. I get where you're going, Al. I understand it. And I'm going back at when I did mine, it was probably 10 years ago now. I did it twice because I let all my stuff lapse and I had to do all the courses over again. And I think, if I remember correctly, that the government administers the test, right, the hunter safety test. And there's it's an 80% pass-fail number. And the firearms, because you had to do a practical and a written test, and it was, coming from the military, it was pretty extensive. Like it was pretty good. So hopefully that you're right. I hope it just doesn't turn into a participation medal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's my biggest fear is to get people out there that are unsafe to handle firearms. Like I think everybody's different at back in the mid-'80s, I think at 12 years old, I was safe to carry a firearm.
Yeah.
But not everyone is.
And let's not forget, you're going to be directly supervised by an adult. You're not going to, get in the truck and dump you off on a road and say, off you go and see you in an hour, right? You have to be directly supervised by an adult.
And I think exposing people, to, like you said earlier, younger to it makes more sense. Then they respect it, and they're not going to abuse it or mistreat it.
Or at least they'll have the knowledge of how to properly do it. I get it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Appreciate it, Al.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't think, and I think this is where parents are going to come into the situation, because one 12-year-old is much different than the next 12-year-old when it comes to maturity. But then again, one 35-year-old is the maturity level on another 35-year-old can be left in question, I will say. But I think that that matching this up for with small game in the province, I think it was a smart move, and I think that it will give some education to people that are younger, and maybe they'll learn something out of the whole thing, and maybe we'll learn the right way to use these things, and not just learn how to use a firearm by playing Call of Duty or watching American television or news. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Bernie, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Oh, my goodness, your phone's really hot.
Yeah, I tell you, you're talking about the minimum wage.
Yep.
You know, the battle in this country for the last 30 years has been about a guaranteed annual income. I'm thinking of single people, in a marginalized group. I mean, the bottom third of the economy. 50,000 for single people and 80,000 for married couples, and then as far as landlords and groceries and everything, price controls, so they can't gouge these people to debt when they get their increase. But I think that this country is time now for a guaranteed annual income, because there's people that are making 150, 200,000, and they're well off. They're doing okay, but the marginalized people are the ones that are being put into shelters in tent cities and everything like that. And I think it's time for the governments of this country to get together and provide a guaranteed income for lower income people.
Bernie, I'm going to let you go. Appreciate the call. Your phone's a little bit cracky, so that's why I'm going to let you go. I don't want to blow everybody's speakers out of their cars. The guaranteed annual income was something that was talked about quite a bit, right? And a couple of jurisdictions actually tried and tested. I think Finland was one of the countries that tried it and tested, and it didn't work. But it was I think it was a pilot, and it was short. I think it's something that would take a lot of time, but there's just so many questions that are attached to that, right? It's if you're guaranteed X amount of money a year, then what happens if you have a job? Does it start? Does it roll back? Or is it additional income? Then do we, how does that work taxation wise? If you get an annual income of $30,000 and you're taxed on half of it right off the top before you even get it, does that make sense? Where does that put you on the poverty line? There's just so many questions. It's still relatively new, right? It hasn't been, it certainly has come about in my lifetime. Not to suggest that I'm young, but it has, and I know that, and I think, I'm pretty sure it was Finland had tried it, and they ran into all kinds of problems with it, and social programs suffered because of it, because people that were on assistance lose that assistance when they go to the annual income, and then that money gets spent in other places, and the snowball continues to roll. Let's welcome Mark to the show. Mark, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. Last week I got a call from the CRA, and everything that I have with them was hacked.
Oh no!
And I'm one of these people that got hacked also by Nova Scotia Power.
Boy, you're having a bad year.
Yeah, putting two and two together. There's three people's name on my account for CRA.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got it all straightened out. It took about 5 hours of phone calls and RCMP, the whole 9 yards. But what kind of bothered me a little more is CRA found out January 31st.
Holy smokes.
They told me the last week of September.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And God knows what could have happened in that time period. Luckily, nothing did happen, but I'm keeping an eye on everything. But just to let people know, like Nova Scotia probably 99.9% yes that it was Nova Scotia Power that they got all the info from.
Well, did you lose anything, Mark? Are you okay?
Yeah, everything seems to be okay to date, so luckily.
Okay. Good to hear. Anyway, appreciate you telling us.
Thanks.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. Last word goes to Al. Al, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
I just noticed there you said something about the guaranteed income program in Finland did not work.
Yeah.
How has that been determined? Did it interfere
canceled
with the government's efforts to create inequality?
Well, no, they stopped it.
Well, I think that's what that means.
Well, so they tried a program, it didn't work, and that's some kind of conspiracy for them to keep poor people poor?
What do you mean? How do you determine it didn't work?
They tried it for 2 years and said it wasn't successful, so they stopped it.
Well, I think it may have interfered with their efforts to create inequality.
So government's job is to keep people oppressed. Is that what you're trying to get at, Al?
Take a look around. Our government goes to extensive efforts to create inequality.
So that you suggesting that by not continuing with the program,
we tax the poor to sponsor the rich here.
Okay.
Look at the Cat Ferry.
Well, right.
Owned by a billionaire, taxed by people who are struggling and homeless.
Right. Okay.
Our government does everything they can to create inequality here.
Why?
But that's what I picked up from listening to you. But what I really called about, was our so-called great and proud democracy.
Okay.
I've taken an issue to my MLA and MP of how I've seen the province using our tax funds, and I can't get it forwarded. My MLA simply refused to forward my concerns.
To whom? The Premier?
My right, the definition of democracy,
right?
If you don't know, is to have my concerns heard in an open public forum by all the members and God and available and made public.
Okay.
That's the definition of my democratic right.
Okay. I'm not disputing that.
Well, I can't seem to achieve it. I pay taxes for that right. It voids the agreement by which they tax me.
So, Al, and I don't mean to cut you off, Al, but I'm curious as to why your MLA won't forward your concerns.
Before I get cut off, I want to tell you the issue is
I
saw my government encouraging flaunting of sexuality in tax-assisted workplaces.
Okay, appreciate it, Al. Maybe because you yell and scream over top of your MLA, that's why he doesn't forward your message. It goes back to my point from the beginning of this show. We have lost the ability to have a discussion, to listen to what people say. Al, you got your message up, and I'm glad I was able to provide that service to you. That's going to do it for the show, everybody. Appreciate it. We're going to be back at it tomorrow. Thanks to Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass, doing the fantastic work that she does each and every day. Big show planned for you tomorrow. I hope you can spend some time with us. Until then, be well and be kind to one another.